Hey, friend, are you feeling overwhelmed by emotions, especially in parenting, marriage, or work? Then listen up. I love helping women learn and implement powerful emotional management tools in a small group environment so they can handle everyday feelings with more calm, more clarity, and more confidence. It's called the Emotional Confidence Club. And right now, we're open to new members. If you're ready for more peace and less stress in your life, apply now for the Emotional Confidence Club at aliciamichelle.com/club. Hi, I'm Alicia Michelle, best-selling author and ICF certified Christian mindset coach. I've helped tens of thousands discover how to build emotional confidence using practical, science, and scripture-based mindset tools. If you're ready for less overwhelm, healthier relationships, and more calm and freedom in Christ, you are in the right place. Let's get started. Hi there. Welcome to today's episode of the Christian Mindset Coach with me, Alicia Michelle. I'm an idea person. I have thousands of ideas all day, all night. My husband can attest to this. I finally learned that if I don't write these ideas down, they're just going to keep bouncing around in my head. So I have been known to get up at 3 a.m. to go into my closet to write down all of these ideas. Now, if you're an idea person, you know that these ideas don't all come to the light of day, but the ones that keep coming up over and over again, these are the ones that I start to pay attention to, that I'm like, okay, and start bringing before the Lord. Is this a dream that you want me to pursue? Is this something that you want me to do with it? Asking God, that's the most important part. But there's this responsibility that comes when we have a dream or an idea. We have to nurture it, we have to protect it, we have to manage the mindsets as we begin to step out in faith to make these dreams a reality. That's why I'm bringing on my friend and Disney expert, Jeff Barnes, today to share what it means to walk as leaders with these ideas, these dreams for our lives, and to overcome some of the mindset struggles that we have. Jeff has written an excellent book called The Wisdom of Walt. I've been to Disneyland with him and experienced what it's like to be in the parks with him. He is a wealth of information, not just about Disneyland itself, but really telling the story of Walt Disney and of the parks and how they came to be through this idea of having a dream, going for a dream, and some of the obstacles Walt Disney had to learn to work through and overcome. I am thrilled to have him on the show with us today. Here's a little bit about him. Jeff is also known as Dr. Disneyland. He's a best-selling author, a keynote speaker, and a Disney historian. He's the former Dean of Student Success and Professor of Humanities at California Baptist University. He made history by creating the world's first and only accredited college course on the history of Disneyland. Inspired by that course and a life-changing battle with a brain tumor, Jeff wrote two best-selling books, The Wisdom of Walt, Leadership Lessons from the Happiest Place on Earth, and Beyond the Wisdom of Walt, Life Lessons from the Most Magical Place on Earth. All of these years in higher education, now Jeff is retired to write and speak full-time. He travels the world and speaks, inspiring people to embrace courage, creativity, and perseverance, just as Walt Disney did. He's been featured in the Orange County Register, the Press Enterprise. He's been featured in the Walt Disney World Magazine, A&E's History Channel, and he lives in Riverside, California with his wife, Lindsay. Together, they visit Disneyland and Walt Disney World as often as possible. Jeff has told me that if they can go once a week, sometimes twice a week, that's a normal week for them. So this is an amazing man who knows so much about Disney, but more importantly to our discussion today and to his work, he shares lessons we can learn, those of us who have dreams, who have visions that God has put in our heart. And we're feeling like, what do I do with this? And am I normal for feeling some of these things? Here is this conversation with Jeff Barnes, Dr. Disneyland, on leadership lessons on pursuing your dreams. Hey, Jeff, welcome to the show today.
Thanks for having me on. I'm so excited.
Yes. As I was just sharing with everyone else, you and I met through a group where we're learning about different things in business, but we've also met a couple of times in person at the most wonderful place on earth, Disneyland. And
That's right.
so it's been fun to experience you like in that group, but also hear some of these stories and watch them happening in real time. It's fun to have you on the show today.
Absolutely. We met each other virtually, and I could tell from the very beginning that we had a lot in common, to include
Yeah.
living in Southern California, right? And
Yes.
so we
Yes.
got to connect personally, one on one with our families at the happiest place on earth, not once, but twice. That's been a highlight for us in 2025.
Oh, it was for us too. In fact, my daughter and your wife have connected and continue to have a friendship on Snapchat, which is really funny. I love the fun connections that have been happening from this. Honestly, when we connect in business groups, we're like, hey, this is what I'm working on. But you shared about your book, The Wisdom of Walt, and it's a fantastic, regardless of the fact that we're friends. I know this is a great book to for anybody just trying to figure out how do I go from where I'm at to live the life that I really want to live, the life of my dreams? And so I'm glad we're talking today about some of the things that get in the way of that. So this isn't a book necessarily about Disneyland or the
Mhm.
story of Walt Disney. I love how you've taken these lessons from Disney, his life, and helped us distill them down into things we can learn for all of us trying to live the life that we really want. Let's start today talking about this topic, limited beliefs or limiting beliefs. Those are things a lot of us struggle with on the surface. We think, I can't do that, or that's too hard for me, or I'm not made for something like that. And I love that you say it's not about what you believe, but how hard you believe it on that
Mhm.
limited thinking versus goal thinking. What were some things that you would say to someone who struggles with limited beliefs? And how did Disney encounter this and work through it himself?
Thank you. I am thrilled to hear that you enjoy the book because we love Disney, right? But what if rather than just consuming Disney, we could actually use it to level up in our life,
Mm.
business, relationships, and our story? That's what I'm all about. That's what the wisdom of Walt is all about. I love your opening question with regard to limiting beliefs. I think it's that mindset of I can't, I won't, I never, I always,
Mhm.
that holds us back more than anything else. It was even common for Walt Disney, the king of imagination. Walt was held back a time or two from his own limiting beliefs. After the success of Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, he went on record saying, I don't think I'll ever do anything as good as Snow White. He almost stopped making movies because of that limiting belief. And then
Wow.
after the instant and overnight success of Disneyland, he went on record saying there'll never be another Disneyland. And here we are in 2025. And guess what? The
Wow.
sun never sets on a Disney park anywhere in the world because fortunately, Walt let go.
Mm.
Going back to the Frozen reference from a dozen years ago, Walt let go of the limiting belief that there would never be another Disneyland. We all have them. You have them. I have them. The folks listening today have them, and it's holding us back. One of the challenges I give to the audience when I'm in front of them providing a keynote or a workshop is go all in on your dreams.
Mm.
Stop going all in on your limiting beliefs. It's time to let those go. Fortunately, Walt wasn't limited by his beliefs. He talked about the keys to success being confidence, courage, consistency, and curiosity.
Mm.
He had a ton of confidence in himself, a ton of confidence in his ideas. He was willing to go all in on his goals, dreams, and success, even when he had those doubts, and especially when his own wife and his brother
Yeah.
doubted those dreams, goals, and beliefs.
I think we all want to get to that place where we say, okay, I want to go all in on my dreams and not my limiting beliefs. In your opinion, what keeps us focused on the limiting belief versus the dream that we want to believe in?
I love what Tony Robbins says. You don't experience life, you experience what you focus on. Think about that for the moment. I'm going to use a Disney reference here. One of the favorite attractions is Haunted Mansion. What made Haunted Mansion so revolutionary when it opened in August of 1969 wasn't just the theming of a haunted mansion at the Disney park, but also the ride vehicle, the Omnimover. What was unique about the Omnimover is it allowed the Imagineers to focus the guest's attention on where they wanted you to look and away from where
Um,
they didn't want you to be looking,
yeah.
versus a Mr. Toad or a Peter Pan, where you can just turn and look and see whatever you wanted, to include the empty spaces in that particular attraction.
Mm,
Life's an omnimover. You get more of whatever you choose to focus on. If you choose to get up every single day and think about what you don't have, think
mhm,
about what you can't do, your past failures, your past traumas, then you're just going to get more of that. Believe me, Walt had past traumas, Walt had past failures, bankrupt at the
mm,
ripe old age of 21,
mm.
loses his first successful cartoon character, which was not Mickey Mouse, even though he said, we can never forget it all started with a mouse. It didn't. It started with Oswald, the not so lucky rabbit. Nobody believed in Snow White. Nobody believed in Disneyland.
Mm.
Walt chose to focus on the end goal, and he chose to focus on what he thought would be maximum value for audiences. At the end of the day, Walt didn't want to be remembered for Mickey Mouse, Snow White, or even Disneyland. Walt wanted to be remembered as a storyteller.
Mm.
What every great story requires is not the happily ever after ending.
Yeah.
Walt knew that every great story requires conflict.
Mm.
We have to be willing to get up every day and choose to do hard things. That's how we're going to level up. That's how we're going to get better. That's how we're going to move forward into our own great, big, beautiful tomorrow. We do it one day at a time, one decision at a time. Walt Disney World today in Orlando, Florida, is our nation's largest single site employer, the most popular vacation destination anywhere in the world.
It's amazing.
Let's go back to 1923 when Walt is bankrupt with his first studio, Laugh-O-Gram Studio, and he's only 21 years of age. Imagine if someone walks up to him on the street, he's bankrupt, he's homeless, he's thinking about boarding the train coming out to California and continuing on with his dream of being an animator. If someone had said to him, "Hey, buddy, we need you to come to Central Florida and build the vacation kingdom of the world, the most magical place on earth," he would have been completely over. That's not how it happened. He did it one day, one
Yeah.
decision, one dream at a time. Focus on what you want, ignore the rest.
What we focus on is our decision. We get to choose that. Somebody said this last weekend at a conference, you are your biggest influencer. What your thoughts are your biggest influence. I thought that is so true. All of us have experienced, I would say 99% of us have been to a Disney park and experienced the Haunted Mansion. When the cart moves to this place and says, focus on this and focus on this, that's a great example of that. I think one of our biggest problems is that we see these issues come up and we're surprised by them. We think the conflict is something we're doing wrong or we missed the mark. It's really part of the story. Every story has
Mhm.
conflict, critical part of it.
I'm going to make another Tony Robbins reference. I love
Okay.
it when he says your number one problem is you think you shouldn't have any.
I had some leaps in my mental health and growth when I finally stopped being surprised by problems. Expect there to be zero bumps. Don't expect there to be conflict because that only feeds the limiting belief. It's just reinforcing that and wanting us to go back
Oh,
into
woe
our
is
shell.
me. Yep,
Yeah, we don't want
yep.
to go and do anymore. On that same line, we have to be a leader inside of ourselves. Disney was a thought leader and people looked to him for leadership. He had all these incredible ideas. There must have been inside of him these two things working where he was able to decide, what am I going to focus on, like we were just talking about, and also what do I need to be able to make things happen? In other words, like, when do I need to push myself or push harder? When do I need to rest? When do I need to call on other people for help? I think those are really critical parts of this process. Can you share more about that and some stories that relate to that from his life?
Yeah, I think Walt is a tremendous success story, an amazing American success story, and he wasn't alone. There's three elements to the idea that Walt wasn't alone. First, he had his wife, Lily. Lily would go on to say, I've never seen Walt beaten at anything. Now, imagine your significant other saying that about you at the end of the day. I've never seen Alicia. I've never seen Jeff beaten at anything. That's a testimony.
Yeah.
Because life is going to come at you. You're going to have those bumps. You're going to
Oh,
have those
yeah.
issues. You're going to have those challenges. That's life. Never seen you beaten at anything. And then you had Walt's brother, Roy. They were amazing partners and made a phenomenal team of brothers as businessmen. I always say, if it weren't for Roy, Walt would have driven the second studio, which today is the world's largest entertainment company, into bankruptcy over and over again.
Mm,
But if it weren't for Walt, Roy would have spent the rest of his life selling vacuum cleaners door to door in Los Angeles. So they
yeah.
needed each other.
Mm,
Roy played to his strengths. Walt played to his strengths. They knew who each other was. They stayed in their lane, helped and supported each other. Lastly, in building the organization, Walt may well have been the world's greatest HR director. Walt wasn't especially gifted or talented at anything per se. He was an okay artist, but he wasn't a phenomenal animator. The initial success of Mickey Mouse, that really belongs to Ub Iwerks, or
mm,
even the design of Disneyland. The only Disney park attraction single-handedly designed by Walt Disney himself is Tom Sawyer Island. Walt had the vision. He hired the right people
okay.
and was smart enough to let those people go. As leaders, we have to believe in ourselves.
Yeah.
We have to believe in our ideas. We have to constantly be surrounding ourselves with the right people, the
Right.
Lilies and the Roys, building up our team, building up our organization, and making sure we've got the right people in the right places, and then constantly casting that vision of here's where we are, here's where we're going to go. I've had the privilege of interviewing multiple Disney legends, Disney Imagineers who were hired by Walt and worked alongside Walt. When I get to the question, what was it like for you when Walt Disney died in December of 1966, to a person? And this is more than 50 years later. They refuse to answer and simply respond with next question. His emotional impact on their life and career is
Wow.
so significant that they still will not go there.
Not just speaks to we're leading not just ourselves, but we're leading other people and how we act towards our dreams.
That's how you know you're a leader. See,
Are
leadership
people
isn't a
few?
position, title, power, authority, where you rank in the organizational chart.
Yeah,
Leadership is simply the answer to one question. Do you have followers? And
exactly.
I've interviewed these folks, and they would have followed Walt anywhere
Oh,
because
wow.
Walt took them to places they never dreamed possible.
Hmm.
That's leadership.
He knew his limits. He knew he had to bring other people in. He knew when it was time to stop or
Mhm.
listen to somebody like Roy, who's like, yeah, no, let's put a break on this because that's important, especially if you are a highly creative person. You just tend to want to say, let's just go all in on this. So we need those people to balance us out and to notice in ourselves when we're getting a little off kilter.
I think timing is important as well. The dream for Disneyland started in the 1940s when Walt would take his two young daughters, Diane and Sharon, out on what was known as Daddy's Day, Saturday or Sunday afternoons. They would dink around here in Southern California, beach, mountains, museums, but their favorite place was the merry-go-round in Griffith Park. They would ride the merry-go-round again and again. Walt would sit on the nearby park bench eating peanuts. It was there that he had an idea, a vision for a place where parents and children could have fun together. But he didn't get up off the park bench and immediately start building Disneyland. He waited for the right moment. Even when the right moment came, Lily didn't want anything to do with it. In fact, her response when he pitched the idea was, Walt, why would you want an amusement park? Those places are filthy. And of
Ah,
course, today, when you
yeah.
think of the Disney park, you immediately associate it with cleanliness, which
Mm,
was a promise to Walt's wife, Lily, wanted nothing to do with an amusement park. Roy said to Walt, you've had some crazy ideas in your day. We are not building an amusement park. But by the time Walt got around to it and they opened the gates, it was Roy who bought the first ticket for $1 on the very first day.
oh,
So
wow.
again, you have the idea, you're creative, you're visionary. You got to get up off of the park bench, but it might not be today and it might not be tomorrow. And
Right.
that's okay.
It's important to recognize the things that need to happen before this thing happens.
I think about it like this. I can remember telling folks at my church in June of 1991, following my second trip to Disneyland, I'm going to write a Disneyland book one day. I had no idea what that meant. And I certainly had
Yeah.
no idea how I was ever going to make that happen, but I knew it would happen one day. It wasn't until 2015 that it actually happened. There's a part of me is like, why didn't you get this done sooner? Why did it take you 25 years? Because there are stories in the book that resonate with the readers that would have never been in the book because they hadn't happened in my life yet if I had written
Yeah.
it sooner rather than later.
The stories need to happen. And that kind of goes to the next thing I wanted to talk about, which is when we're in the middle of the story and we're feeling all of the bumps that we were talking about before, it doesn't make sense. But you say in the book, your story is going to make sense. Just keep going. Just keep going. And so, can you think of a time for Walt Disney where that was true for him, where it just didn't make sense, but he chose, I'm going to keep going. I'm going to keep walking towards this? Hey there, it's Alicia. Do you love the science and scripture based tools that we talk about here on the show, but want some accountability and practical help applying these principles to your life? Well, then you're invited to apply for the Emotional Confidence Club. I like to think of the club as the lab where we implement the tools that we talk about here and in my book, Emotional Confidence. Imagine having the chance to interact with me live every week as you practice the 7 emotional management tools in our roadmap to help you manage emotions like fear, anxiety, guilt, shame, anger, and more. I love watching the lives of the women in the club transform in incredible ways, moving from overwhelmed and frustrated to calm and confident. You too can learn how to make these truths applicable to your situations and find emotional peace despite life's ongoing stress. Right now, we are welcoming in new members, but it is by application only. Does this sort of accountability, growth, and caring support as you apply these tools to your life, does that sound good to you? Then apply now for the Emotional Confidence Club at aliciamichelle.com/club. That's aliciamichelle.com/club.
The challenge isn't to think of a time. The challenge is to choose which time to
Yeah,
think
so I'm
of.
sure there were many. And that's
Yeah.
honestly, even before you answer this, I was going to say, we sit here and look at Disney today and we know how the story ends. We see the parks, we
Mhm.
see the movies, we know the entertainment company that they are. It's hard for us, almost like Bible stories. We know the end of the story. We see how all these things work out. So it's hard for us to commiserate with some of the characters in the book.
I'm going to go back to March of 1928. Walt, with his second studio, the Disney Brothers studio, after he's come to California following the failure with Laugh-O-Gram Studio in Kansas City, he's had some success with his first cartoon character, Oswald the Lucky Rabbit. It is distributed by Universal. He needs more money. He and Lily board a train and they head to New York City. He's going to sit down with Universal and a middleman, fellow by the name of Charles Mintz, and negotiate what he hopes to be a bigger and better contract. In that meeting, Walt is reminded that when he signed the distribution deal with Universal, he signed away the rights to the character. Worse, while he and Lily were in the Big Apple, Universal in Southern California had been hiring away the animators at the Disney Brothers studio
Oh,
that had helped make Oswald so successful. Instead of walking out of that meeting with a bigger and better contract, Walt walks out with nothing and is staring bankruptcy in the face for the second time in 5 years. Only this time, he's going to take his older brother, Roy, down with him. It's on the train ride home that he remembers a little mouse that had kept him company during the darkest days in Kansas City. Rather than calling his therapist, he gets
yeah.
to work. Walt pulls out a pad of paper, sketches out a
Mhm.
story, shows it to his wife, Lily, and says, "Honey, what do you think of this guy?" And Lily says, "Walt, he's cute. What are you going to name him?" And Walt says, "Maybe Mortimer." And Lily says, "Oh, gosh, no, that name is awful. Why don't we go with Mickey instead?" And so it was in that moment the world's most popular and profitable cartoon character was born. But my favorite part of that story happens before Walt ever boards the train to come home to California. Before boarding that train, he sends a telegram to his brother Roy, who was still in Los Angeles. The telegram reads, "Leaving tonight, stopping over in Kansas City, will be home 7:30 Sunday morning." Now, in March of 1928, Walt Disney had everything in the world to worry about because
Yeah.
everything was not okay. The message he sends to his brother before he pulls out the pad of paper, before he sketches the story, before he shows it to his wife Lily, before she changes the name from Mortimer to Mickey, the mindset is don't worry. Can you imagine what our world would look like if we started every day with that message to ourselves? Don't
Yeah.
worry, everything okay.
I had a friend who I haven't seen in several years. I remember one day at her house, she had a sign in her living room that said, "Everything is going to work out just fine. Maybe not today, but eventually." That's where we need to live. Not that we need to be surprised by the things that come up today, but live with the mindset and expectation that it will be worked out for God's glory. It will be figured out. It will be all taken care of. And we can keep taking that next step. That leads to this conversation of overthinking, where we're in the middle of all of that and we're like, I don't know what to do. And that can keep us from acting. So we want to use discernment. We want to take caution, but sometimes too much thinking can be detrimental. Was that an issue for Walt, or did he have people who were doing the overthinking for him and he was just somebody who plowed forward?
In fact, I would argue the number one difference between Walt Disney and you and me is Walt got up off the park bench and took some kind of action.
Yeah.
Whereas the rest of us, we're still sitting on the park bench thinking about it and dreaming about it
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
asking what ifs about it. And we're
Right.
posting on social media about it, doing marketing plans about it and business plans about it, but we're not actually doing anything about it. Walt was an action guy. At the same time, Walt was a much better starter than he was a finisher. It was great
Yeah.
that he had the Roys and a team to finish things and get things cleaned up. Too many of us are stuck in the overthinking phase of success and seeing our own dreams come true. You want to get in better shape, drop a few pounds, get some body issues under control, whatever it may be. The person who just starts eating less and moving more is going to destroy the person who is researching the best equipment, the best gym, the best workout plan, the best nutrition ideas. Because all of that at the end of the day is a distraction from doing what? Taking action.
We don't want to make a mistake. The mistake equals failure, but the mistake is the learning along the way. What if part of learning is just stepping into the ring and starting to see what works and what doesn't? It's
Yeah.
important.
People don't realize the opening day of Disneyland was so bad that the company refers to it as Black Sunday. Everything that could go wrong did go wrong. The only attraction that did not break down was the Jungle Cruise.
Ah,
It was 105 degrees in the shade, no water fountains because of a plumber strike. Asphalt on
gosh.
Main Street didn't have time to dry. They ran out of all of the food, all of the soda. They had planned for 10,000 people, but over 30,000 crashed the gates.
Oh
It
my
was
gosh.
abject disaster. Walt focused on what he could change, what he could fix, and ignored the rest. At least now he knew.
You bring up the issue of control, which is the last topic I wanted to cover here. You say in the book, you are going to lose control if you change things. Walt had told stories on movie screens in animation, but now he was losing control because he was setting up these stories in real time with real people. Yet he was able to let that go, but he also put certain things in the park to help control the stories, like the ability to position the viewer at certain points on rides. He also did something which I understood why I like Disneyland so much. And it is the concept of the berm. The
Mhm.
berm is that, as you know, is this wall that's around the entire park that they built to create the illusion that you're inside of whatever land that you're in. I didn't understand why I always felt so immersed and away from my problems at Disneyland. And I think the berm has a lot to do with it. Talk to us about letting go of things you can't control, but also putting in things like berms to help us as we're making these changes.
Walt wanted to be remembered as a storyteller. In the 1950s, there were approximately 2,000 amusement parks across the United States. Most of them were failing. They didn't have a great reputation, which is why Lilly wanted nothing to do with them. And Walt says, you know what? I'm not going to build an amusement park. I want a park that tells stories. I want a theme park. In order to get some control of the environment and tell the stories that he wanted to tell, he dug out the rivers of America, which gave him 350 tons of dirt, which he then dumped around the perimeter of the park. That gives us a 12 to 20 foot earthen berm, which allows the magic of the Magic Kingdom to stay inside and the distractions of 25 million people in Southern California to stay outside. And I tell people all the time in my workshops, you got to build a berm around people in your life. You got to build a berm around your goals and your dreams and your success. You got to build a berm around your calendar. There are thousands of distractions that come at us each and every day. Like you said earlier, we are our own influencer. We have the ability, if we choose, to build a berm around all of that. My wife and I are currently about 25% through writing a brand new book based on relationships, just having the best time. There's a certain amount of time each day that we set aside to write and work on that together. That's not negotiable. We have a berm around that particular task. And there isn't anything else that's going to interfere or distract from that. You have to be intentional about building those berms, again, with people, with your calendar, with tasks. And if you don't do it, then the things that you don't want to control your life and story are going to take over and you won't have control.
The longer that I am alive as a human, I have to take control over those things. I have to have the discipline to get up, exercise, or to spend time with God, or the rhythms that I know are going to help me in my day. I'm in charge of that. No one's going to come along and tell me to do it. And if I don't like how my life is going, like losing weight or whatever the thing is, it's my responsibility to notice that in myself and to have the discipline to make those changes.
Easy to blame a lot of other people, right?
Yeah.
It may even be more fun, but it doesn't change the story.
So the idea of building berms, that was one of the biggest takeaways for the book for me. It's why I have a harder time feeling comfortable at California Adventure. Those of you who are in Southern California know California Adventure is the park right across the way from Disneyland. I remember walking in the park with you and going, see, this is why, because I can see the convention center. I can see this building out there. They don't have that same berm feel at that park versus Disneyland. They're just the masters of it at Disneyland. You feel so different at that park.
Yes, I like California Adventure. It's gotten a lot better in the last 10
Yes, it
years or
has.
so. From day one, it just didn't have that magical feel that Disneyland had from day one in 1955.
Yeah. This was fascinating to me. All the stuff you have in your book. Tell the listeners again, if they want to learn more about what you do, bring you in to speak at their company, or just get involved, let them know how they can reach out to you.
Sure. So you can find me at thewisdomofwalt.com. I have a free weekly resource. It's a weekly inspirational, motivational blog called Wednesdays with Walt. Go to my website under resources, put in your email address, and you'll get Disney inspired life and leadership lessons every single Wednesday, 100% free. You can unsubscribe at any time. On the website, you can find out more about me, the books, keynote speaking, workshops, and the upcoming relationship book that will be released later this year.
Thank you so much, Jeff, for joining us today.
Thank you.
As I underscored in that conversation, the idea of the berm for me is the biggest takeaway from that book. First of all, I love Disneyland. I grew up in Southern California. It's part of what I did as a kid with my parents. I now have taken our kids to Disneyland many, many times. We had season passes at one point. I love that it's not just a great place to visit and have fun with your family, but that there is so much wisdom and gifts inside of the story of the creation of Disneyland. I didn't know a lot of this stuff about Walt Disney. I certainly didn't know that Disneyland was thought of as a massive failure from the very beginning. And here, now we're looking back at it and see it as it is today. I would encourage you to say, what is the gem for you? Thinking about the big dream that you have right now, whatever it is, maybe it's just an idea that God has put in your heart. Like someday I want to do this, even if it's just like someday I want to travel to this location, or I want to experience this with my family, or I do have this goal. I want to write a book. I can't tell you how many people I've met now that I have written a book. People are like, I want to write a book someday. I think there are these dreams and these visions that keep coming up that if God has put that in our heart, we feel that God could have a story in this for us, then to take a step and to use some of the principles we've talked about in this episode, watching our limiting beliefs, paying attention to things around us that could be pulling us away from the dream, putting people in place who are going to help protect that dream, being afraid to overact versus getting stuck in overthinking, and being willing to lose a little bit of control, but also putting up the berms around us. Like I told you, that berm idea, that has been so pivotal for me. And I have several berms in my life that are rhythms that I put in my everyday, even towards those big dreams that I'm pursuing right now. There are certain things that I have to stop. If I find myself going down a certain path with my thoughts, I'm just like, that is unhelpful, Alicia. You cannot keep feeding that. Even if you feel it in the moment, we can acknowledge it and see why it might be there, but I can't keep feeding it. You and I are responsible for taking charge of the dreams that God has put in our heart and moving towards them and dealing with these issues. So I pray that there have been some great nuggets that have come from this conversation today. I would love it if you would reach out to me on Instagram. Let me know what have been some of the takeaways from today, even just one idea that Jeff has shared. By all means, please go out and purchase Jeff Barnes's book. It's called The Wisdom of Walt. It's one of those resources that I feel like I've read through. I've got lots of dog-eared pages, and I'm going to be going back and reading again just to re-glean some truths that I need to hear and be inspired by somebody who had all of this failure and difficulty and challenges, Walt Disney, who now has this incredible dream and legacy and corporation that is not perfect. They have brought so much beautiful connection to this culture for families, for people sharing stories. You can't deny the effect that Disney has had in our culture as an American. Just being inspired by those stories, Jeff has a great book, and it's a good place to start. All right, friends, thank you again for sharing with me in this conversation. Let me know some takeaways you have, and I will see you back here for next week's episode. Bye-bye. Thanks for joining me today. For full show notes and helpful next step resources, visit aliciamichelle.com. And if you enjoyed this episode, I'd be honored if you would leave a 5-star rating and review. Thanks for being here. I'll see you next week.